Wow, I'm looking at the friends, and it's Wilma Khan.
Okay, I think it's time for me to welcome everybody. I'm Betsy Start, Elizabeth Start, Director of Michigan Festival of Sacred Music, and I'd like to make sure we thank our supporters, our usual foundations, Irving S. Gilmore and Marvin and Natalie Oken Foundations, Congregation of St. Joseph, our Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs funding. And we also had some special grants this year, the Arts Council COVID Bridge Fund for arts organizations helped us out, and also Arts Midwest from the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act. We've had some support from there. Also support from sponsor Tawfiq Ali, attorney at law, and generous donation, anonymous donation in memory of Lilia and Wen Chao Chen. Last year when we were able to do events and people could come out and sit in audiences and stuff like that, we had a wonderful concert by Rohan, Krishnamurthy, and Raaginder, and they have released the EP from that recording, from that concert as today, I believe. And they're here to talk about that. And I think I'm just going to turn it over to you guys. Maybe you might want to start out as talking about how the project got going. And just we'll field questions and listen to little bits of it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Betsy. Great to see all of you guys here. Yeah, we're super excited. Raaginder and I are super excited to release this EP from our show, which was almost a year ago. It's hard to believe. It's like we've lost track of time, but that was almost a year ago. And it was a really special show for us because it was kind of a new concept. We were presenting a lot of new ideas and a lot of new concepts that we've been thinking about playing around with, but it was kind of the first time we put it all together, and we were really happy to see the way it all came together, and we were lucky to also get a good recording that we could kind of polish up and share as an EP. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the album. It's now available on all streaming platforms. Every track kind of has, it's kind of like a story. There's all sorts of things going on from start to finish. We'll be playing some clips today, but I think to get really the full experience, you really have to kind of listen from start to finish of each track to really kind of see how things unfold, how the energy kind of comes in these different waves. And yeah, it's along, sort of the big picture of this album is it's combining a lot of different elements of Indian music, especially the South Indian Carnatic tradition, the North Indian Hindustani classical traditions, bringing these things together, Hindustani violin, Carnatic mridangam, percussion, and also it interweaves elements of Sikh and Vedic chanting. So one of the tracks, which is actually track 4 in the EP, features Pandit Shashi Bhushna Hebar, who is the Hindu priest at the Kalamazoo Hindu temple. So we worked on a completely new composition where we were kind of taking one of the most Hindu chants and sort of deriving the music, melodies, and the rhythm from the innate sort of musicality of the chant. Looking at sort of what kind of melody, what kind of raga comes from that, what kind of rhythm comes from that, and how we can kind of build these interesting sort of textures between the two of us.
Yeah, for me personally, it was Rohan and I met through Rohan and I met a couple years back, and he had reached out to me just to jam out, and I think that kind of evolved over time, and then he had told me, you know, about the festival and how it's in his hometown, so that was quite special because I had never been to Kalamazoo myself. And just to see like personal piece of his childhood was very special, getting to spend time with his family over there, as well as just playing for a brand new audience. And I think musically, we were able to present something that was different, just like Rohan was saying, and we were able to really just hone in and just put something new out there. And I think I'm quite proud of that, and hopefully we can definitely do more of these.
Just maybe following up on that, one of the questions that we had come in advance of this is, for you, Rohan, playing all over the place in all kinds of different venues and different audiences, is there something different about playing back at home in Kalamazoo and at your alma mater?
I think there's only one right answer to that. So the answer is yes, for sure. And actually, the performance last November as part of the festival was not only in my hometown of Kalamazoo, Michigan, but also at the college that I went to, and in Dalton Theater, which is a venue that I've done so many different types of performances at. I've seen so many different types of presentations, events. So it's always, yeah, it's a really kind of nostalgic experience going back to that venue. It also happens to be a venue that I really like acoustically. Having been to so many different spaces, it's one of those venues that I've actually played at acoustically many times, in spite of the size, but it has a really nice sound. So yeah, that was a really wonderful thing. And of course, when you go back to your hometown, you always see some familiar faces, which always is really nice. And my parents, of course, were in the audience, and my wife was there as well, and so it was good to see some folks, but a lot of new faces as well. So I think it was nice to see kind of new audiences coming to the festival. I've been very lucky to be part of this festival for, I don't even know, maybe 10 years or more at this point, maybe over a decade. So kind of going back, every year, every couple of years is really is honestly, I have to say, in many ways, a highlight of my year, to be able to come back to Michigan and to be able to share something new. Almost, I think every time I've come to the festival, it's been kind of a new project, something new, a new collaboration, a new, new idea altogether, and it's just a great way to keep coming back to Kalamazoo. So thank you, Betsy and Eric and everyone who's involved with the festival. It's a fantastic festival every year. I wish I could stay for longer to see all the other incredible performances, and it's really an honor to be part of the festival with such an incredible lineup every year.
Well, you always bring us something different each time. So it's not like, oh, there's Rohan again doing that same old thing. No, he's always doing something new, right, which is very cool.
Eric, did you want to maybe play a little bit of the first clip? We have a few excerpts. Like I said, this is one of those EPs where every piece is so unique, and it's really kind of telling a story. There's a whole narrative to each piece, so you really ideally want to hear it from start to finish, but we don't have enough time to play the whole thing. But these excerpts will at least kind of get us a little bit of a sense of sound and the music that Raaginder and I were creating.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let me stand by. Let me grab the controls here. Switch the screen share, and then share computer sound. Give me a thumbs up if you guys struggle to hear these.
Hasta
Yeah. So
Back to you. That said, it's amazing listening to those priests. I'd love to hear more about that.
yeah. So this was this is also a fun project for us because the order that we presented the pieces in the performance is actually not the exact order that we presented them in the EP. So we kind of played around with it because I think being at the festival, at the Festival of Sacred Music, there was a certain kind of flow, a certain kind of energy, and that's why we wanted to start the performance, the live show, with this new collaboration, which we call Rudra. Rudra is the name of this mantra or of this chant, this Vedic chant, a very ancient, very important chant in the Hindu faith. And we started off with this. This is actually the last track in the EP because we wanted to actually kind of finish with that sort of mood and that sort of sort of deep faith-based kind of feeling. So this was, as I mentioned, this was a collaboration with the priest in Kalamazoo, the Hindu temple, Shashi Bhushna Hebar, and yeah, we basically, worked with him and sort of looked at some different chants. And the thing with Hindu chants and the Vedic chant tradition, as with many chant traditions, is that there's a lot of music. There's a lot of musicality in the chant tradition itself. So while it may not necessarily be considered a performance art, you may not go to a concert hall to hear a priest chanting for an hour and a half. There's a lot of musicality to it. And in fact, the roots of Indian music are said to be in the Vedic chanting. The basic, actually, the three notes of that are considered sort of the root of the music come from the chanting. So we're kind of using that, and we kind of thought about different ragas, different melodies that kind of derive from the chant itself, and also the rhythms. From a rhythmic standpoint, it's a really interesting thing because chants often aren't necessarily based on like a steady pulse, a steady beat. So we kind of played around with different ways of combining the idea of like a musical beat with the chanting. And you kind of hear throughout sort of sections of where all three of us are playing, where the chant is more kind of in the foreground, and there are sections where we're playing more music, and then that kind of leads to the next chant verse, and it goes back and forth like that. If you listen to the whole piece, there's actually kind of there's sort of two big parts to it actually. So it starts off kind of building up in one raga, which has more of a kind of almost, you might say, almost a haunting kind of quality to it, the opening half. The second half then actually takes the exact same, basically same raga, the same mode, except with one note that's a little different. That makes it more of like more of a happier, major kind of sound, a much sound, and that's how these kind of concludes. And then it actually ends with a very famous verse, Hindu verse. That's actually the very ending of the piece.
I know it's kind of a struggle to try to pick 90 seconds out of these things because the tracks are all very long and very varied. And you said it was an amazing experience. I was there live when the concert was being played, and just the journey that you take people on, I thought was really something.
One thing that was really exciting about this collaboration was the fact that we had just met the Hindu priest just a couple days before the actual show. So, I mean, it was hard to plan that out because Rohan and I are both in California. So, but there was just some sort of energy that we kind of had that we were able to figure out this composition and make it happen. And just how Rohan was saying, there's not really a rhythm to chanting, but I think the priest himself kind of had an idea on like what we were going for, and that way I think it just kind of blended in really well. So it was just a beautiful experience just to be able to be in that moment and create something very quickly, and then the turnaround also being very quickly.
Did you meet with the priest and run through anything beforehand, or was it really in the moment that was created?
We had to plan this out. So
Okay.
I was actually in touch with the priest, actually several weeks or months earlier, sort of just brainstorming the ideas, but he was always actually quite confident. He was like, "Don't worry about it. Let's meet in person, and we'll make it work." He's like, "I get the idea. I get the idea." I was like, "Okay." I mean, I was sort of I wouldn't say worried, but like it was a new idea, and I haven't specifically worked with him or anyone else on this kind of concept. So then a few days before the show, all three of us met with him, and yeah, and I think the energy just really synced. There was any number of things I could have tried to say and explain, but he kind of heard it and he got the idea, and he did a fantastic job. I think just creating this flow between the music and the chant, which is really not obvious if you just listen to the chant or if you just listen to the music. The sync is not obvious. And we actually had a really beautiful rehearsal, a meeting and rehearsal at the temple, at the Kalamazoo Hindu temple. So that was a really wonderful experience. Just the three of us, no one else was there at the temple. It was just the three of us, after all the daily rituals, everything were done. And we finally sat, when he finally had time after, finishing everything he had to do for the day, he was gracious enough to give us some time, and we actually ran through the idea, and that was, I think the space also, makes a big difference. A lot of inspiration comes from that kind of space and that kind of energy that I hate to say it, but very hard to recreate on Zoom. different kind of energy in person.
Yeah, the whole the whole experience just felt sacred, and just going into the festival, it just the whole thing was just very harmonious. And I think to have a artistic experience like that before performing at a festival like that was very beautiful, and I was just glad to be a part of that, and glad that you guys were there too.
I think it really comes through on the recording too. Like I really do. Like if you're watching this and you either were there or wish you were there, they did a really good job of capturing that energy, I think, because I've been able to listen to a lot of the audio. I think it was really, really well done how they were able to kind of capture that energy. So bravo to you guys for that.
I have to say, actually, now that I think back to the performance, like I remember even after the what's the third piece in the EP, the Charukeshi, that piece, I remember that was basically the second to last piece in our show, and it's a pretty lengthy, maybe like a 20-minute piece almost, and there's a build up, and there's two sections, and it really reaches this kind of crescendo. And Raaginder and I have played pieces like this before, and we are familiar. There's a lot of improvisation, of course, but there are different forms, there are different structures that we've known, that we have learned over the years. But I remember the response from the audience was really, I think, something very spontaneous. I remember actually we got a standing ovation in a way that was that I honestly very long time. It was like completely spontaneous. It wasn't like a kind of like a sort of whatever conventional perfunctory thing. You just got to go through the motions and clap and give it the standing ovation and get an encore kind of thing. It was a very spontaneous thing. I don't think the audience even knew, was this the last piece or was there more? That they just happened, and we got a standing ovation. You can hear that actually in the recording. And I should give a shout out to Neil Godboy, who's the studio engineer who mastered this recording. He has a wonderful studio, Airship Laboratories, and Saish Koteka is the one who did the artwork for this. He's also a good friend of ours here in California. So I think Neil did a nice job capturing the applause, so you can really hear. It was really spontaneous. I think, and I was going back to the video, and even I think Raaginder and I were sort of very happily, sort of surprised to see like that much energy, from the audience. And again, it's a different thing, but I think a lot of people in the audience didn't really know what to expect. They said there was no program. It wasn't like here's 5 pieces and they're just getting a standing ovation after the 5th piece. It was like there was this sort of unbridled response to what happened, and that was that's what we look for in performers.
I've been to a lot of shows in Kalamazoo, and I can't recall too many acts getting 2 standing ovations in one performance. Because I remember that being very surprised, just like you said, that like, wow, you just felt after the piece ended, like I got to stand and applaud for that. That was absolutely amazing. So you're spot on there. I had forgotten that. You're right. You did have that happened to you twice. So that's awesome.
we did have some questions that were uh, prepared beforehand here. And I just also want to make sure that anyone listening, if you have questions you want to send in, please do that through your Facebook or the Zoom chat. But one of the questions we had was there's a, for our audiences that might not be familiar with the diversity of styles and traditions in Indian music, could you tell us a little bit about particular traditions and lineages that you both are drawing from? So the maybe the different, you know, what meshes and what's different about your traditions.
Yeah. So yeah, we touched a little bit on this. It's actually a really complicated question because like in this show, what you're hearing again is kind of the coming together of the two forms of Indian classical music, the Carnatic tradition, the Hindustani tradition, through violin and mridangam. So you're hearing that. You're also hearing elements of the Vedic chanting, the Hindu chanting, and the Sikh chanting. There's that's in track 2 in the EP, Tukadi. So that's, you know, you're hearing a lot of different elements there. But I guess if you look at, you know, the different sort of styles and genres that Raaginder and I also sort of study and perform and listen to, there's a lot more. So I guess what you're hearing is, you know, not only these sort of traditions specifically coming together, but also how we're filtering it in our own ways. All these elements of, I mean, I remember we did Raaginder and I had a performance in LA, which was a completely different kind of thing with, you know, using electronic beats, and I was playing drum set and Indian percussion, a hybrid kit, and we had a cover of a pop song, and there was all sorts of different things going on there. So that's also, you know, kind of factors into who we are musically and personally. So, so that wasn't a specific part of the performance or the sort of that sort of sensibility, that interpretation of this tradition here always.
Yeah, and
Raaginder
specifically,
did a little bit of singing this too.
yeah, so specifically, I would say like um, where North Indian differs from South Indian music is um, just the stylistic aspects of it. There's a lot more improvisation in North Indian music, um, and uh, and I feel like just bringing those elements in, for me personally, because the violin in Indian classical music is more geared towards Carnatic music. So in this sense, it was interesting to just like take those same Carnatic rags and apply more of a North Indian twist to it. And it's it's hard to describe exactly what the differences are to like someone that doesn't know about this music. But it's one main thing is just when I'm more used to playing with a tabla, which is two drums. Um, and in North Indian we have instrument similar to mridangam, which Rohan plays, called pakawaj. But but mridangam, I feel like it has this like really nice ring when you play to it. So I felt like even though I played this different tradition of Indian classical music, because there's already things that are because there's already so much cross collaboration between this that has already existed. Um, I think it happened really seamlessly, and yeah, I think we can definitely go on more uh, about like with the Sikh chant specifically. There's in the Sikh tradition we have some rags that are made by the Sikh gurus, and Tukhari being one of them. So that was one of the rags we also presented. So um, in India is a very diverse country, and so within many different states, many different areas, there's just so many different types of uh, music, culture, and so we try to slither around and find our way in. Plus, being part of the diaspora, also do things that are we relate to out here as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think one way I think about like the Hindustani and Carnatic styles, it's almost like different dialects, of the same language. So it's as Raaginder's saying, it's a very hard thing to explain unless you know at least one of the languages, being spoken. There's so many nuances, um, it's like they're very similar in many ways. Actually, the basic concepts, the raga, the tala, the basic concepts and stuff are the same. But then there's been at least like 700 years of like independent development, while things are still, of course, being cross-pollinated. So there's a lot of like nuances, and I've also been lucky to study the tabla seriously for the last few years with Pandit Swapin Chaudhary here in California. So that's also sort of helped me kind of discover not only the differences but really the similarities. What's actually the same between these different drums and styles and dialects. Actually, in one of the pieces, we have an excerpt of that coming up. Raaginder, actually, the basic composition, the melodic line that he's playing is from a Carnatic piece, from a Carnatic composition called Vatapi, a very famous piece, and he kind of took that as a basic melodic idea and then improvised on it. So,
What track is that, Rohan? I can play it right now for you.
Hamsogani should probably be, I guess, the second.
Track 2? That's what I was planning on playing. Should I just play it and we'll find out if it's the right one?
Yeah.
Okay. Stand by. Very nice. Very nice.
Feel like listening to more of that.
Hey, if anybody wants to listen to more, I'm happy to listen to more.
All right, people should listen to the album.
That's right. That's why we can't give them too much. Welcome, Yvonne. I've got everybody muted, but welcome to our broadcast.
And I know Eric's going to give us information as to how one can get the EP.
Yes. In fact, I'll put the link in chat right now to his Bandcamp page. You guys are not going to want to miss this show.
Okay. And as you're doing that, also want to plug our upcoming program on September 13th, Connecting Chords Music Festival, our migratory music at the Nature Center on September 13th. 5 different groups around the Arboretum area for people to walk around and listen to while they enjoy nature. But let's see, we have any other questions that are being generated out there in the world?
We've gotten a few compliments. Every time I play the audio, I get a few applauses, and so people are digging it for sure.
Okay, cool.
I was curious, and I think you touched a little bit on this, talking about how much of this is improvised. Like while you're playing, if it's something like a jazz where you're really kind of feeling your way through it, or if there's kind of a structure and you're just kind of figuring out how you're trying to get there. Anything you can, because I'm a novice when it comes to a lot of this style of music, and I'm blown away by it, and I'm curious how that actually happens, and when you're performing like that.
Again, it's a complicated question. So in the Carnatic and Hindustani styles, like the form, the type of improvisation, the amount of improvisation can vary depending on the type of piece that's being performed. Whether it's a purely melodic introduction, whether it's a melody with rhythm, whether it's a purely rhythmic improvisation. So it kind of depends. The Rudra, the piece that we did with the Hindu priest, that of course was not something we could just come up with on the spot. We did have to plan that out. There were a lot of aspects of, how much of the chant are we using, which verses, when do we break? There are a lot of elements. But even within there, it's not necessarily, we're not performing from a score, right? So there's a lot of improvisational elements about, I even thought about, okay, what kind of rhythms are we going to, am I going to play? What kind of ragas are we going to be using? But the specific development of the raga, the specific development of the rhythms, those are still kind of improvised. Those are largely improvisational aspects. So there's still a lot of improvisation there. The dynamic, the energy between the players, between the three of us in a piece like that, is something that's very, very much unique to the performance. If we perform it again, it's going to have a different feel. So it's not totally set. The other pieces, and then the Sikh chant, Tukari, that piece, also was something that we talked about. We had planned it out a little bit, but there's a lot of aspects of development, melodic development, rhythmic development that's still very much in the moment, spontaneous, and every time you do it, it's unique. The other pieces, the Charakeshi, Hamsadhwani, those follow a certain kind of form that's a little bit more common in the Hindustani tradition. So there are certain structures, like you're saying, like in a jazz, in a straight ahead jazz, form. If you're talking about an AABA or something like that, there's a certain flow, certain expectations that everyone knows, and you're able to play off of that. Ahead, a solo, whatever it is, a verse, chorus, whatever the form is. So there are certain formal things like that which we knew going into it. Which means if you asked us to play, a 5-hour concert right now, we could probably play without even talking about any of it. Right, so we can just
that sounds like an exclusive to me. Like that, we might have to, that if you promise that sounds like a plan. I don't have anything going for the next 5 hours. I don't know about you guys, but
so there's certain things, if we're playing off of forms that we both understand, that are part of the tradition, and then there's there's certain long forms that can be expanded on. So there's a lot of improvisation, when it comes to that. But coming up with a basic melody, like I had mentioned, Raaginder was this melody from a Carnatic composition. So to come up with a melody like that on the spot, I'm sure Raaginder could do it, but to come up with that specific melody, much harder, right? So it's something you have to kind of think about, and that was composed actually in the 18th century. That piece, that line, that melody, that composition is over 300 years old, composed by a very famous Carnatic composer, Dikshitar, Muthuswami Dikshitar. So that has its own tradition. So there's a lot of improvisation, but there's also a lot of compositional forms. There's a lot of things that we expect, that we know are going to come, and there's a lot of sort of unknowns that we keep to keep the journey interesting and unpredictable.
Yeah, and there's within like some of the more Hindustani forms, such as the Charukeshi, or even the Hansdwani. Basically, you have the composition, and the composition can be like, in this case for the Hansdwani, I had played 3 lines that are composed, and within everything else within those 3 lines is going to be improvised. And so with Charukeshi as well, same thing. There's like the main composition, the one that you'll hear over and over again. The ones that are repeated, those are the ones, the actual composition. But then when you get into what Rohan was saying, forms. There's specific forms that exist and they go chronologically. And then it's just knowing the form, but then within that form, you're improvising and building on the form. And then that just builds up. And a lot of the Hindustani tradition is all about build up. So you start off slow and then you play that set composition. And after you play those couple lines, then you improvise, build, 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 build. And then you go medium speed, high speed. And it's pretty much the same format when you're talking about a traditional Indian classical performance where there's just a couple lines, build, and then it goes fast. So I think that's kind of where improv lands. And even within the Vedic chant, that one as well, like within the sections that me and Rohan did play, even though most of that piece was set, that the sections that we did play in were improvised, but they were definitely rehearsed. So we kind of knew what direction we were going in, but at the same time, we were also coming up with a lot of these ideas on the spot.
Have you guys actually ever played together in a concert before?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But
You
not
could, well,
this.
you said the chemistry was there, and you could, at least from my perspective, it felt like there was really good chemistry there.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, again, there's a lot of, I think everything we presented in this show was pretty much a premiere. I don't think we've performed that anywhere else. And there's also, I mean, so a couple of things to add to what Raaginder's saying. Like, there's no, in Indian music, like there's really no concept of like free improv, like where you're just kind of doing whatever you feel like and just kind of like, for lack of a better term, sort of randomly coming up with ideas on the spot. That concept is not really there. There's usually some kind of boundary, whether it's the form, whether it's even the melody, like, okay, you can only use this scale, you have to play within the scale, you can only play within this stala, this like, rhythmic framework. So there's a lot of boundaries, which is why this can actually happen. And I should actually say, even for my own concert experiences, there have been plenty of experiences, especially in the Indian classical world, where let's say I'm playing with a singer and a violinist, a Carnatic concert, and all of us are flying in from different parts of the country. We meet, an hour before the show at the venue, and we're just catching up for 59 minutes of that. And then 1 minute before we go on stage, we're like, okay, maybe we should try these pieces, and cool. And that's it. And then we can play for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. A lot of times, part of the expectation at the sort of higher levels of as you get to learn the tradition more and more, you're often expected to ask fewer questions. It's like you should be able to go on the spot and play, and you should know different people's styles, and you should be able to respond to that. Your reflexes have to be really sharp. So if you're calling the other artists a week before and asking them what are they going to play and how are you going to do this, and that suggests that you're not really prepared to play on the spot. So it's just kind of like.
I remember attending a jazz concert.
I think it was a.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I think I'm forgetting. Raaginder might be able to remind me. It's either Ustad Akbar Khan or Pandit Ravi Shankar. They have this great quote where he's like, someone asked him like, how long did you rehearse for this performance? And he said, either 0, like nothing, or I've been rehearsing my whole life. Depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of idea.
Yeah, I was saying, I remember I attended a jazz performance, and it was very similar comments. The 3 musicians were all from different countries. They had not met before they were on stage together, and they had one of the best shows I'd ever seen. And I was talking to one of them afterwards, and because they all even spoke different languages, and he said we were speaking the language of jazz, and so we all just knew, and it was astonishing to me, just how universal something like that was.
It's a language, yeah, for sure.
I'm curious, when you talk about these melodies that are, hundreds of years old, is there a notation they're written in that you have somewhere that you can reference, or is it just that you've learned as you've been just learning your instrument studying?
Well, I know in the Carnatic tradition, there have been a variety of like ways of notating melodies for centuries now. Most of them are based on the solfege, the Indian melodic solfege. But there have been more newer systems in the last maybe 100+ years where all of the slides, all the ways you connect the notes, with the shakes, the slides, the oscillation, all these things, there are ways of notating that. But, you know, in spite of these different forms of notation, Indian music is still, by and large, a very oral tradition. It's something oral and oral. It's something you learn from your guru, from the master, and you learn over a long period of time. You commit all these ideas, you know, to memory, ideally, and you have all these ideas sort of floating around in your head over time. But there have been actually even the Vatapi, this composition that, you know, this melodic hook that we were using in the Samsudhani piece, the second track. It's probably about, I don't know, at least 250, 300 years old at this point. And there are different versions of it, just as you have different versions of, you know, pieces, say, in the Western classical tradition. Even though it's been notated and passed down, there are different students, descendants of this composer, Dikshitar, who had slightly different ways of notating it, or learned it in slightly different ways, and there are different schools of that. So there's one version actually that I was just rehearsing with another friend here in California, and it's a very different version from what we think we know of the piece today. It's a starkly different from even the way Raaginder played it, and that's one version of the piece that's just not as popular today, but apparently comes from a very legitimate source, which is like maybe I think Dikshitar is maybe like a student, maybe 3 generations down the line. So a very authentic source, and he's notated this in the 19th century in this very specific way, but it sounds so different, almost sounds like a different piece to our ears.
Yeah, and like just within that topic, I remember just my violin teacher teaching me something, teaching me the same lesson, and both times it was different. And she said it was the same thing with her teacher, like because I've from her teacher was Ustad Ali Akbar Khan. So, and I've learned from a couple of students that I've learned from Ustad Ali Akbar Khan, and I've learned the same composition that he's taught them. But when I learn it from different students of his, I can see the differences. So because I think the oral tradition goes down, it's like a telephone game, but at the same time, um, it's beautiful because each student that takes that information in puts their own perspective into it, and in that way, something new gets created every time. And I think that's something that's definitely existed within this tradition for centuries.
I think we have maybe like a more defined sense of like pieces because of recordings in the last 100 years. Prior to that, you know, I'm not sure maybe people weren't even asking the question, like, what did this piece sound like 100 years ago? Maybe they were like, how did my teacher perform it? And maybe how did, you know, his or her teacher perform it? That was it. We have this question now of like, what was it like 150 years ago? Because we think we know what it sounded like 100 years ago with recordings. Before that, we look at notation, we look at these different sources, and it's like we have a sense of maybe what it's like. But we see that there's a lot of variety. But as Raaginder's saying, I think the beauty of this tradition, the beauty of this diversity is that it's all still considered the same piece. You know, it's all considered acceptable as long as it follows the basic rules of the music, which is the raga and the tala. But all these variations are considered sort of diverse interpretations that certain maybe schools, certain lineages specialize in more than others.
Thank you. So do we have one more clip to listen to?
Yeah, I was going to say if this is the final track on the EP, and this is the one that I was most fired up about. I was telling these guys that this is the one that everybody's jaw was on the floor. It was the final, it was the close of the performance, and so selfishly, I'm probably going to let this one play for a little while. But is there anything, Rohan or Raaginder, you want to, preface this with any, what are we listening to here?
This should be the Chalakeshe, and this is actually I think track 3 in the EP. But as you said, this was kind of a finale in the performance. Okay. Yeah, let's listen to it, and
okay,
maybe we can talk about it.
Yeah, we'll let you see which one it is on the when we fire up here. Stand by. Wow, guys. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was a really special, and I was leaving it longer because people on Facebook were reacting. So I was letting that play for a little while, but that goes for a while. I mean, that's a 20-minute track, and you get done listening to that, and you're ready to, charge up a mountain or whatever. It was great. It was really great.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. No, it is. Listening to these excerpts is like, it's cool. I mean, it's a different experience when you listen to just a little bit of it, like, because you already get a feeling of the kind of folding of the story. You get a little bit of this change in energy and flow. But it's, again, like I said, when you listen from start to finish, it's just different. It takes you to a completely different space.
Yeah, it's basically, this music is a form of meditation, and uh, that build up is very important. And the piece just started slowly, and you try to take all the aspects of that rag and all the characteristics. And once you get that, then we get to the medium speed where, uh, you know, things start warming up and slowly getting all the way to the fast speed to build that intensity. And that's what's so beautiful about this music. Just there's just so much variety and so much range where you can do the slow things and just stay there as well. But um, in pieces like this, where you can really build up that momentum, and that's where a lot of the spontaneity comes in, especially with this piece where we did this thing called Saval Jawab, where um, it was pure improv of me playing something and then Rohan reacting to me, and that term in itself, Saval Jawab, means question answer. So it's like having a conversation where I play a little phrase and then he plays, and then this in itself builds up to that final point where we end with that idea together, and then finish the piece itself.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's like there's this sort of spontaneity and this like sort of like unpredictable aspect to the music, not just for the listeners, but for the artists as well, right? So we don't actually know once we start playing, even though we might know sort of like the general sort of like benchmarks, the form, the flow of the overall piece. We don't know actually what's going to happen. We don't know how far it's going to build. We don't know how long it's going to build. So it's really, it's a new experience every time we sit and play. It's a new experience for us and for the audience. I think that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask Eric if we had gotten any questions coming in from our Facebook people. Anybody out there?
Mostly, no actual questions that I have seen, but lots of applause emojis and thumbs ups and hearts and all those things that say people are react to. We had a few people that have commented, they'll play the audio and say, "Wow, that's amazing," and so it's wonderful. I said every time, I think I should just shut up and we should just play more music, and then we'll get more responses. But it's like I said, the stuff is great, and we will make sure that on our Facebook page, we will not only link to Rohan and Raaginder's collective Facebook, or their individual Facebook pages, but also all the ways in which you can purchase this album. It's on Bandcamp. You can listen to it on all these major streaming platforms. And we'll make sure that all that information gets out, because it's really a wonderful album, and it's a really good, it really captured the feel of what was happening in the room on that particular day. So if you either missed it and regretted it, or you were in there and you want to relive it, definitely go take a listen for sure.
Yeah, and again, Raaginder and I want to really thank all of you, Betsy, Eric, everyone at the Michigan Festival, Connecting Chords Festival, for inviting us, for giving us this platform to not only perform, but to really create. You gave us an opportunity to create something new, stuff that we've been thinking about, but unless we have that opportunity to actually share it with the world, it'd just be a bunch of, just a bunch of ideas. But this gave us an opportunity to really put it together to the extent that we, could even produce an EP that we could share with people who couldn't come to the performance. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for doing such a great job. Just having incredible artists and lineups, you know, year after year after year, as long as I've known the festival. It's something that, you know, everyone can really look forward to. We're obviously living in a very weird, you know, challenging time right now where this is kind of the best we can do in terms of coming together and you know, interacting with each other. Although there's some you know, glimmers of light in terms of quarantining and live streaming and stuff like that. But I think this performance and this recording really just shows you the magic of live music, live performance, artists who really know and care about the music that they're presenting, and that kind of chemistry and that energy is just so unique to the live performance. And then having that with an audience, and as I mentioned, that kind of spontaneous reaction to the music is just something. As performers, I think we're counting down the seconds until we can do this again. But hopefully, you know, we're seeing more venues streaming, and hopefully we're going to see more opportunities to at least try to create this kind of music together and share it with people, because I think a lot of people are also missing this experience of being there together and experience them. It's just it's a very different thing when you're listening to music together live in person. So hopefully it'll happen soon enough, but this is kind of the next best thing. And we definitely hope folks get a chance to listen to the album, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, because like I said, this is a lot of new pieces, not a lot of new ideas here. So we'd love to get people's reactions to it and see what you guys think.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to when we can have normal concerts again too, whenever that will be. But for those who aren't familiar with what we're doing with the festival this year, we are looking at ways to try and have collective musical experiences, and some things are going to be popping up with short notice. So get on the e-list or just visit our website a lot. And also, all of our events thus far we're planning are going to be free. So if anybody wants to donate to us, go to our website, mfsm.us, and help us keep going, because we are doing some pretty cool stuff, but it's way different. It's not this cool stuff. It's enjoy together, but socially distanced things. So, you know, keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Right,
and thanks again to all the sponsors, donors, patrons who are helping make all of this possible. So thank you all for.
Thank you.
We'll close with our slideshow that we kind of ran in the beginning. But I just want to personally thank thank you guys. I know there's a lot of commuting and getting it to places and all that kind of stuff, and it's wonderful to be able to talk to you. It was such a fun show, and it's wonderful to listen to how it happened and all the stuff behind it. And like I said, we'll make sure that everybody knows how to get this album, and
hopefully we get a chance to do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and stay safe out there in California, you guys.
Yep. Excellent. All right, I will close and let you guys mute the mics, and then we'll just kind of hang out. We'll let the cycle stop, and then we'll close the Facebook feed, and we'll touch base just here on Zoom to wrap up. So with everybody who was watching, thank you, and we'll see you soon.